Have to like Mary. Okay, why do you like Mary? Why is she one of your favorites?
You know, I think it's because of her. She seems very aware of what's happening. I think there's a certain amount of just. It's a lot of intelligence, I think, for a young girl caught up into this miraculous story. There's a lot being asked of her, and she seems to have an understanding of what's happening, the weight, the significance. Not only, her willingness to say, like, hey, let it be so to me, but I think you see that, when you say things like, treasured in her heart, she kind of ponders these things, like, it shows there's a certain amount of awareness there that I think is really interesting. Because of the day, right, that she was young enough, and she was a woman, and they weren't as educated. Like, they didn't get past some of those introductory schools in Judaism, right? So they didn't get past some of those levels. And when she goes on and has that beautiful song, right, the Magnificat, it's like that whole piece right there, it's quoting things like these obscure prophets and these different texts. And it's like, it shows that she's really well-knowledged in the Scripture, in the tradition. And I have a sense that she knew exactly what was happening in that moment, and that she somehow had the gravity of it, that she really saw that and appreciated, which I think, if I think about, the shepherds, I think they're just shocked. I would imagine they were just like scrambling, like, what's going on, right? But I kind of feel like Mary's kind of got this, like, she understands the moment. She really gets the gravity there, and I think that's really interesting.
To me, I think Mary speaks to a character trait that is hard for us to relate to today, and that is she understands surrender. Because she obviously had other plans. She wanted her life to go the normal pathway. They would wait until Joseph got his business going, then there'd be a wedding and all this. And what God said to her was that he was going to change all that. And she was willing to say okay with that. I know we struggle with a lot of times. We say, well, God, I want to do what you want me to do, but I can't do it right now. It's just not.
Maybe just wait a little bit.
Wait a little bit. Or no, I want it this way. God, you just have to give me this job. Things just have to work out this way, And rather than surrendering, we just let ourselves stay in a place where we get bitter and angry, and it just blocks us, from really receiving what God really wants to do, in our life. And Mary just surrendered. Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before in groups and stuff, and one of the comments I get, especially from younger people, is, well, that was then because things were so much simpler then,
right?
But things change. And, and also they say, and also that, they were directly spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
So do things change? That's what they think that is why, it's different now.
Yeah. I hear that because I think the world, is the world different nowadays? Definitely, right? But are people all that different? No, I don't think so. Not that different, right? We have, I don't know, if anything, I think we're a little bit more privileged and pampered in our life, right? Do I work as hard as one of those shepherds? I've probably never worked as hard as one of those guys a single day in my entire life, right? Despite my best effort. I think that life is a hard one. Yeah, I know.
Could never get this guy to mow the yard. Never get him to mow the yard.
Not well, anyway.
I think my dad said the same thing about me, so yeah. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun, and there isn't anything new. Surrender, that hasn't changed. Knowing God's timing, that hasn't changed. Having that passion that wants to be there in a moment to see what God has done, that doesn't change. Joseph just listening and responding and protecting, that doesn't change either.
Well, and let's be clear, right? So the Bible is this amazing story about God and the human heart. And so if we talk about, yes, the times are different and the world looks a little different and those kind of things, the human heart is still full of all the same kind of motivations. I mean, throughout the Bible and even in the modern day, we talk about this idea of like, who's going to be in charge of your life? Are you going to let God lead your life, or do you want to be in charge? And we take that and we go right back to the Garden of Eden. And so often all the things that we struggle with in our life, and we think maybe it's like brand new or unique, and I think it is unique, right? But it's not necessarily different than it's always been. I think there's a similarity that's there as well, as different as the context may be in our current world. And I do think that story, what would that story even look like in the current context, you know? Like, what would a modern adaptation or a current, like, form of this story look like? I think that would be really interesting to think about.
Yeah, I don't think us and our relationship with God and the dynamics of that, I don't think those things ever change.